But this is interesting. We'll start at verse 15. This is very interesting. Then she said to him, how can you say, I love you, when your heart is not with me? When your heart is not with me. And you have mocked me these 3 times and have not told me where your strength lies. And it came to pass, when she pestered him daily with her words and pressed him.
Modern words, word him to death.
So that his soul was vexed to death, that he told her all in his heart, and said to her, no razor has ever come upon my head, for I am a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. Now, interesting, it's all over. Forget this. It's all over when he no longer allows that space in his heart for God that was reserved in his heart for God, when he surrenders that space and opens it up. He's lost it. He lost it right there. So it's not about this, the razor, the drink, the razor, the drink, the hair, and everything like that. That's just a physical manifestation of the fact that all throughout Samson's life, regardless, because he was a very flawed person, but all throughout his life, at the very least, he protected this emptiness in his heart, and he said, only this is reserved for God. And regardless of all the mistakes that he made, everywhere he went, he had this emptiness in his heart, and this is only for God, this is only for God, it's only for God. And at that point, he basically filled that space up. And the reason why, what does it say? But he did not know that the Lord had departed from him. I wouldn't even say it's accurate. The Lord didn't depart from him. He essentially kicked the Lord out. Because once he did that, once he let that emptiness go, there was no longer any room for God to dwell in him, and therefore he had no strength. Now, why is it so important? Is because protect your emptiness. Protect your emptiness. It is so detrimental, like I talked about at the beginning of class, for us to be in a constant state of consumption, to be in a constant state of fullness. Because when that happens, that means literally there is no space for God to do what God wants to do in us. And if we don't protect our emptiness, if there's never times in our day when we're still, when we're silent, when we're practicing some type of fasting, when we're practicing some type of just being instead of doing. If we're always doing, always consuming, always getting, always trying to obtain, always striving, we're not protecting our emptiness, and therefore we're not losing God. We're literally kicking God out because there's no space. There's no space, and that's why this media thing is so detrimental for our kids. Think about this. Think about this. Why are so many? We can talk about Americans, we can talk about Europeans, but let's just talk about youth right now. Why are so many youth seem to be they can't receive anything, or a lot of them can't receive anything that the church is saying. There's a lot of reasons for that, but let's talk about one reason. Because Manoah, from Manoah's very beginning, when Samson was born, they made a lot of mistakes as parents, as all parents do. But when Samson was first born, Manoah and the father taught Samson how to be empty from a very early age. They taught him how to protect his emptiness. And I don't think we're teaching our young people that, because our young people are so full of constant consumption, media consumption, information consumption, pleasure consumption. Our young people are so full of that when we try to preach to them, when we try to teach them, we try to give them something, it's not that they don't want it. I think that's what I'm saying. They don't have any room to receive it. Right. They don't have any room to receive it. Because there's no discipline of stillness, there's no discipline of silence, there's no discipline of fasting. There is simply no room for them to receive it. So at a very early age, we need to start teaching our children, because the fact of the matter is that what I'm finding out over these last 18 months is that children are very open to meditation. They're very open to stillness and silence if you just start ingraining it to them. They're very open to it when I go to school. So we need to start getting this into our, because we're going to have a whole world full of adults that are so full of stuff, so full of themselves, so full of what they know, what they think they know, is that they have no room for wisdom, no room for discernment, and that's detrimental. That is detrimental. You can't do anything if you don't have emptiness. So what Samson lost was not his hair. It was not his hair. He lost the emptiness, the space that he had reserved for his whole life for God to dwell. And once that happened, everything else was gone. Does that make sense? Makes sense. So think about this in your own personal life. What are you doing? What are you doing to make sure that there is space in your heart, there's emptiness in your heart for God to dwell? Because that at the end of the day, that's what's going to determine, ironically, how powerful or transformative your life will really be. The emptiness that you have set aside in yourself, that will determine how powerful and transformative your life will be. And we look throughout the prophets, all of them, none of them were perfect, but the difference was that all of them set aside some emptiness within inside of them to larger or greater degrees for God to move through them, and great things were done by God's grace through them. Mrs. Clark, you have a question?
So an example then of my emptiness would be, I must do my meditation so I can feel like I can get off with this guy. So this is like, that's really an example of emptiness?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Daily practice of meditation, definitely.
Okay.
Great. So, example of meditation. All these disciplines we're talking about is really, and even on Sunday worship, when worship is this is my opinion. Now, when worship is done in line and center the way it should be, but even the practice of Sabbath, the practice of worship is really about, there has to be some time when you acknowledge the Creator. You know, when it's not just about your to-do list. It has to be some time set aside when you just acknowledge your Creator. It has to be sometime a week, in your day, even in your daily rhythm. I mean, I'm just basically going back to Genesis model. It has to be some Sabbath in your rhythm, some Sabbaths in your rhythm. Because what does the Sabbath do? The Sabbath protects your space, protects your emptiness, protects emptiness inside of you. That's what it's all about, cultivating. Because if we don't, then we get to the point we never recognize that we're entering into. Now let's start from the beginning. Now we can go back to the beginning, because this makes more sense now. This is a wonderful quote. He's a wonderful writer. I would highly recommend. He has a book called Sabbath, which I just started. And that's where I got this from. There is a realm of time where the goal is not to have but to be, not to own but to give, not to control but to share, not to subdue but to be in accord. And if we never have that emptiness inside of us, see, we're entering into a different space and different time, but we don't realize it, so we're just operating as normal. We're operating that consumption mode. And it's very dangerous, because we haven't realized, what does Ecclesiastes say? There's a time for everything under the sun. So we don't realize when we're transitioning into different times, and we can't respond in a life-giving, transformative way, because we aren't sensitive enough that the time is changing. We've entered into a different time zone. Literally, we've entered into a different time zone. And it's so important, so important. So, now this is the controversial, not controversial, but this is the not difficult. Let's just see where it goes. Let's see where it goes. Let me just start qualifying. Now, okay, yeah, it's 8:16. We got a few more minutes. So, now we talk about emptiness. We talk about emptiness. The empty tomb, what does it signify? What does the empty tomb signify? Think about the principles from the prophetic perspective. What does the empty tomb signify? The fact that the tomb was empty.
Well, this person, Houston, was talking about that. So I mean, he put some doubt in my mind about, first of all, was it even empty? Because maybe what was there had been emptied of the world, because he'd been crucified, and in him was all of the Spirit of God. So it emptied him out in the tomb, and then God just totally consumed him at that point, because he didn't have that half man, if you will, in him anymore.
Mhm.
So he became totally empty, and that was the emptiness of the tomb, and then God consumed him,
Mhm.
and maybe and possibly took the spirit away versus the flesh away. Lord, he just kind of made that thought come in.
Mhm.
But the emptiness was, I'm through with the world, now it's all gone.
Okay. So, but why? So what does? Let me put it this way. What does the empty tomb signify for us from these prophetic principles that we've been studying?
We make space for God.
Yeah, we make space for God. Yes, we make space for God. Okay. Look, what if the tomb? Maybe just I'm just throwing this out there. Maybe part of the reason, or one of the reasons why the tomb was empty, was because if it was not empty, how would that impact the way we lived our life? So let me put it this way. Let's say because the tomb was empty, it now, the emphasis on us is to go out and tell the story. The emphasis on us is to go out and live out the spirit in which Jesus called us to. If Jesus was in the tomb, sitting there saying, hey, look at me, it would all be about Jesus, and it would get us off the hook from living out the spirit that God was calling us to live. So the empty tomb is not just, I think it's not just about the resurrection. Something along that said Jesus had to leave, because if Jesus stayed, the church would have never grown. Because it would have been all about him instead of really living into the life that he was calling them to live into. So we had to take himself out in order for the church to become what it was destined to be. So ironically, the absence of Jesus, the taking away of the physical presence of Jesus, allowed them, because that created space for the church to actually grow.
Right.
He wouldn't have grown as much, so go ahead.
Yeah, because I think you're right. It was mostly his disciples.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're right. But I mean, it was for his disciples, because I think they went through that emptiness when he died. You know what I mean? They scattered, they were well empty. But but when he came back, they became full again, you know what I mean? And they got new courage, new strength, because once again, they were full. So in their sense, they went through that emptiness, and the empty tomb to them signified God's presence with them, and they understood what Jesus was talking about. So they became full.
Oh, that's a good connection of the connection between they being emptied out, being brought to the nadir, and then being full again in the upper room. Yeah, that process.
But that doesn't account for when Mary was in there and crying about the empty tomb and getting excited about the empty tomb. He appeared to her.
No, an angel.
An angel appeared.
Right, but
it wasn't Jesus. That said, "Why are you crying?"
That's what she
That's
was.
what Houston.
We wouldn't.
Yeah, the angel said, "Why are you crying?" You should know this story. And here I am. So he was still there.
Yeah,
Something was still there.
Yeah, something was still there. But what I'm saying is the fact that Jesus was taken away from them as they knew him prior to the crucifixion.
That's what the emptiness for them.
Exactly, the emptiness for them. Right, exactly. He was no longer there, because you got to remember, in the Hebraic context, for most of the disciples, in their minds, Jesus was, what he was going to do was, he was going to overtake the Roman government. He was going to reestablish Israel, and Israel was going to be the most powerful nation in the world.
He was going to be the king.
He was going to be the king, right. So in their minds, he was gone. As far as that plan, this whole thing of dying and all of a sudden, what's that about? But you're right, but I'm talking about him being taken away in that context. So it's just something to think about, the empty tomb. But this was just a side note. This is not important. The important point is, where is the emptiness inside of you? Where is emptiness inside of you? And don't give away your heart to the world. Don't give away your heart to the world, because the repercussions are basically a life that has no power, a life that has no potential, really transformative power. Don't give away your influence. Protect it, fight for it, increase it as much as you can, because that, as much as you can do that, then God can use us and move through us in a powerful way. And I think that's what's so powerful about the Samson story, is that he went through his whole life, and he allowed the pressing of someone, the pressing of the world, the pressures of the world, to literally surrender the one thing that was inside of him, surrender his emptiness. He allowed the pressures of the world to make him surrender his emptiness, and we cannot do that under any circumstances. Make sense? All right. So thank you for hanging in there with me. We're going to take a break. Over the break, I would encourage you to you can go anywhere you want in the scriptures, anywhere you want in the scriptures. But you can go to the New Testament, because that's what we're going to be in the Greek scriptures from when we come back. So you can stay in the Greek scriptures, or you can go in the Old Testament. But with your notes, go back and start analyzing the scriptures with these principles that we're learning, and see how things look differently. Then we'll come back, and then we'll start seeing how the religion of Jesus actually played out in the way he lived his life. And then hopefully we'll get through that, and then we're going to be talking about the history of the church, where the church historically went astray, how they came back, the Reformations. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of time to go into that, of the church and the different, how they kind of started from the religion of Jesus, strayed, then came back to the religion of Jesus, and it's all this boomerang. The church has always been boomeranging between something out here and something that goes back to the religion of Jesus. So it's very interesting from a historical perspective. And in the meantime, we'll be doing our meditation group. We're going to start up New Manna again. We might explore a summer worship series, so that's still in the making, or a possibility too. So these are other things that we'll be doing in the absence of Bible class. All right. Thank you. Let us stand. Deep breath in. Assuming a prayer posture. Remembering the words that Jesus gave to us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
You too.
I know that's the same thing. That's the same thing.
I mean, I was too, but I was like,
I did the same thing. As soon as I woke up, I said, I'm in.
I know, because I was coming and I was like,